idea what we're doing.
You have no idea?
I kind of
So
have an idea.
you're going to introduce the podcast thing. It Takes Two, right? So what's this Take Two podcast thing, and what's our story? The whole idea is what's our story? Where this thing got started? How do we even get in this little realm of what we do today? And what's it like being the second to me? All right, so here we are, Nancy. What is this thing?
What are we doing?
New podcast we're putting together. It Takes Two, right?
Yes, It Takes Two. So what better way to launch it than telling our own story?
Yeah, no one really knows your story or my story or our story or what the story is. And so what is the story, Nancy? Like how did we get to this point? Like what's TRIWORKS? Who is TRIWORKS?
How did it get started? How far back are we going here?
I don't know. We're going to go back to the beginning, I think.
The beginning, like how we met beginning or how TRIWORKS started? Okay.
But to start it off, like before we get into the meat and heavy, you and I are the owners of TRIWORKS.
Yes.
Have been forever.
Forever.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And let's go to the time hop. Let's jump on the time machine. And how did we meet?
We met
This is crazy.
in Atlantic Beach, driving around in our cars with separate friends that we just met up and went to Lost Treasure, which you worked at the time, right?
Yeah, me and my friend Corey Lewis.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually saw you guys at a
payphone.
A payphone. Payphones don't exist anymore.
We were calling our parents to tell them we were going to be late, and there's really nothing to do, but we were going to hang out a little bit longer.
So how many years ago was that?
Come June, 25 years ago.
So I've known you. You've had the pleasure of knowing me for 25 years.
Sure, we'll put it that way.
Yeah. So 25 years ago we met at a payphone type thing. We went putt-putt, and the rest is kind of history. Pretty
much.
How in the world do we go from playing putt-putt and all this to doing what we do day in and day out?
Oh my gosh. We've been together now. We've been married 18 years. We just celebrated 18 years. I've always sang. I always sang. And you were always very supportive of me in that sense, right?
Yeah.
So
things have changed a lot since then. So you used to have to go to California all the time to record. Mm-hmm. So what people don't know back, like if you're watching this whole podcast, is Nancy can sing in an incredible way. Not just like a braggadocious, like, hey, my wife can sing. No, Nancy should be actually doing this full time professionally. Like,
thanks.
You should. So Nancy used to travel to California all the time to sing, and so you're after this dream of being a professional singer.
Yeah, and I would always have to pay for photographers, and I would have to pay for producers, and this business is not a fun business because you get ripped off a lot. So as we got married in 2005, and I was traveling, and we put a lot of money towards this goal of mine, right?
A lot of money, guys. When I say a lot of money, we're talking like $70,000 in debt and credit.
Yeah, and songs, production, and photography, and press kits, and travel. And so what happened was we met a guy, and we
won't mention the name.
We won't mention the name.
So I want to start this before you go down this story. I think one of the things we've learned in business, whenever there's really crazy things that happen that just maybe give you a gut check or just seem as like something extremely bad that happened to you in life, when you look back on them retrospectively, it's always amazingly positive.
Right.
Okay. So just prefacing that, we'll begin this.
Yeah. So this guy moved down here with his family. I met him. I was in sales at the time, and I met him at a place, and he says, well, I'm a music producer. So we just were like, well, let's work together. Long story short, ended up, he got kicked out of his house. The electricity went off.
Everybody was a music producer.
Everybody was a music producer. So we're like, well, just come to our house till you get this figured out. He had his wife and 2 kids. Stay for a couple days until you can figure out what's going on.
So we offered a place for this music producer to live in our house. We were somewhat newly married, a couple of years, right?
Yeah, a couple
3 or
years.
4 years. And we offered for Nancy's dream to have this gentleman with his family come and stay in our house for what we thought was going to be a few days.
Yeah. So a few days turned into a year.
Almost a year.
I think a year, which of course racked up more debt because we were paying for all the expenses, all the food, their stay, and she was homeschooling their kids at the time, so she wasn't working, and he was at the house producing all day.
They ate all the food.
Ate all the food so fast. And so we were just, I was like, there is an end game, right? We'll produce this record, we'll send it off to Sony, and come to find out, it was legit.
Yeah. So to preface that a little bit, the guy that was the producer at the time said he had a contact with Sony BMG.
Yeah.
and had actually produced some songs that were well-known songs at the time.
He was really good.
And he was extremely good and talented. So it wasn't like we were just like, hey, there's this random guy making music, come live with us. Yeah. So we had heard the stuff he'd done. We'd seen him produce the music. We'd already recorded a couple songs. Like we were like, holy crap, this is great. But we never got the full, like, hey, here's the contact list of, hey, because he said he was communicating with actually one of the really, if I mentioned their name, one of the really higher ups at Sony BMG at the time. So yeah, but before that, like he came and lived with us, and we turned our garage into a studio.
At first, I was recording in our closet. Remember, I was recording in our closet. We're like, let's do this right. So we put floors down in our garage. We got we built a box.
We built a soundproof
box. We got all of everything, the computers, and at the time you weren't a Mac user.
No, I didn't have a Mac. So this is where it all began. So go into that, because I was in the box and you were out there like watching everything. Yeah. So the music producer was a Mac-based guy. He knew how to build the studios. He kind of done this before. So we built an isolation booth. We bought soundproofing blankets. We built the whole thing out. And then from the microphone through,
the preamps
we
and
bought
mics.
The Neumann microphones. We had the Avalon preamp, which is like extremely expensive tube stuff. And then at the time, we were just using Logic Pro. So we had that built into the software. But in order to do that, you had to have an audio interface. We used Apogee at the time, which was kind of the highest dollar thing you could get. So as far as creating vocals and music, we had the best you could buy in the business. So this music producer had access to this. And I don't know what we spent on it, but we were investing in Nancy. Again, investing in Nancy. They stayed for almost a year, right? And so this guy would produce the music, and then he would mess the music up, and we're like, this isn't going well.
Yeah, he would over mix and over produce. Like, you have to redo your vocal; it's crap. And so it was always like, you can't do this, and you're not doing this right. You got to do it again.
So this was the first narcissistic person we met in our lives. And so what he was doing was sabotaging. So he was doing these songs and sabotaging just to get more time. And then all of a sudden, after a year, he's like, hey, I got a job at a university. We're like, whoa, what happened to this whole thing?
Yeah.
And within a couple of days, he was literally gone.
We actually sat down with him. It was like, you guys have to do something, either get a job or help us pay the bills, or you're going to have to go. Like, we can't put ourselves in a position where we can't pay our own stuff now, because you're putting us in more debt.
There was a lot of bad things happening as far as money was concerned. So we put ourselves in a bad shape to do this.
And we were working 2 or 3 jobs at the time too. And doing this on the side.
So ultimately he left. The interesting thing about, I keep saying interesting thing, one of the things about when he left was his hard drive went bad. Like, so while he was producing music for us, his hard drive went bad. And I bought him a new hard drive. Well, I kept the old hard drive.
Yeah.
And so I think the paranoia of like, what's this guy actually doing here? Is he lying to us? And we didn't really know how to get him out of our house and all these other things. But at the same time, we had a really good like personal relationship with him. Like, he had the same birthday as I did.
It was weird.
A lot of weird things.
Really close.
And we became really close. So whenever you come really close to people, sometimes you get blinded by the things you want in life.
Right.
So, when I had the hard drive, after he left, I connected it, right? So I connected the hard drive just to make sure we hadn't been hosed over for everything. And lo and behold, in the hard drive were the email communications with Sony BMG.
I know. That's what was so frustrating.
So like when I say Nancy was like this close to making it, like beyond this close. And it was not like we're not talking the lower, we're talking like the guys at the very top of Sony BMG without saying the old man's name.
Yeah.
Clive Davis.
Yeah.
He was in the email chain.
He said something.
He says, you've got the talent in the room, now get it together.
Yeah.
So the gist of it was, he liked the track, he liked the vocal, he liked everything, but he didn't like necessarily the mix and the music to it.
So it had nothing to do with me.
So it had nothing to do with you.
And I thought I was going crazy. I'm like, do I suck? Like, what's going on? I'd ask you all the time. Like, is it my fault?
So the communications were happening with Sony BMG over and over again. And then finally it just dropped off, because I think they just kind of got tired of him. And then from that point on, it was just, hey, I'm going to hustle time here until I find a job. So that's how we started. At the time, it was TRIWORKS, because we were doing photo, video, a little bit of video, and music. So the 3 was kind of like the TRIWORKS thing. That developed a little bit beyond that. So he left us with thousands and thousands of dollars worth of gear. I made it a point to really learn from him when he was there, though. I saw his methodology for how he created music and all this other stuff. And the crazy thing is I just started producing music.
You did, like out of the blue. And I mean, you've played trumpet and stuff, but you're not like a music major or anything, but you have a good ear for music.
And I think we both, one of the things I think we both, when we put our mind to something, we do it.
Yep.
So sat in there in hours and hours and hours to figure this thing out. How do you, like in the Avalon preamp was somewhat overwhelming.
Yeah.
But slowly but surely we learned it, right? So we learned all that, and then we had some local friends. We produced your Christmas album, and we started doing things for ourselves. And that was truthfully like this really terrible thing that happened to us as far as thousands of dollars in debt was kind of the beginning of the business.
Yep. And then you bought a camera so that we were in a little band here locally for a little bit, and you would come out with your camera to take some photos and video of me performing.
Yep. So not to get into the long-winded of the tweener stage.
Yeah.
But we also worked multiple jobs.
Yeah.
So we had 3 jobs for about 5 years to pay off debt. So we both knew we wanted to start a family. We knew we wanted to do certain things in life, but we both had debt. At the time, I had a landscape company. We didn't want to have that
extra stress. Yeah.
It was terrible.
And it was 2009. Remember that? That was when the fall of everything and just the collapse. And so it was like, oh my gosh.
It was terrible.
The market was bad. Yep. So we worked to pay all that off.
Yeah, we literally high-fived each other in the evenings. So we would get up in the morning. I had a landscape company. I would go cut grass until like 3:30 every day. I'd come home, take a shower, and then I'd go work a retail job in the afternoon. Nancy would do the same, and we would just high-five each other, see you tomorrow. And we did that for about 5 years. We burned the candle at both ends really hard.
Yeah.
But what did we do? We paid off our debt. We paid off all the debt, man. Like, so we paid off all the debt, and then we were set from that point forward. A big learning curve. Like, I'd never want to do that again. Like, I'd never want to have that debt that I can't pay ever again. And open the door for other things. And I remember, like, this sounds really silly, but like sitting there on the lawnmower cutting grass, thinking, I don't want to do this when I'm old. I know this isn't proproprietary. You know, I always had this passion to learn video. I think everybody in the video business always starts with wedding videos. At the time, there was this guy on Vimeo, and he's still out there. It's called Orange Wedding Films. You can go check him out. So the company was Orange Wedding Films, and he was one of the very early guys that were making films from weddings, not like this really crappy wedding thing.
Yeah.
So
like
I was infatuated with his the cinematography and everything he did, and I started just studying and doing that. And so we started taking a few weddings, like most people do.
I'd be your B camera.
Yeah, and then like you guys are going to hear later another podcast we have set up. But one of the weddings that we filmed was Richie and Christina, right? And so that's where we met them years ago before we turned into all this whole thing.
Yeah.
So Nancy at the time, your next job was with NC Coast Communications.
Yeah, my first job right out of college. I worked there for 5 years, and then it was all real estate magazines. And I knew the real estate was tanking, and it was not a good place to be. So I actually applied for a job at a TV station. And I was like,
you did the magazine thing for years. You put how many miles on that Jeep Cherokee?
Oh my gosh, like 30,000 miles a year or something.
So Nancy made a whopping $24,000 a year.
It wasn't very much.
I made less than that. Like, anyways, I used to cut grass at our apartment just to get a lower rent.
For a year when we lived there. Then we got our house the next year.
Yeah, my mom sent you a thing. Hey, the television station is hiring for a salesperson. I think you'd be great for this. And for those out there that know Nancy hates change.
Yeah, I'm very committed to the people I'm with. So it was really hard for me to leave. But also, I didn't have any experience in TV sales. I mean, I sold print ads, but I knew nothing about the television. And I was like, well, what's the worst that can happen? They'll say no. I might as well apply. It really was a last-minute decision. I put my resume together and sent it off. And it was a couple months before they called. Now that I've worked there, I had worked there for 10 years. And I realized why it took so long, because they were always just slammed. So busy, slammed. Yeah. But I got...
So Nancy became a sales rep at the local television station, where she very quickly rose to number one. So she aligned herself with the smart people there.
Learned everything
from them. And there's a few people out there that certainly helped facilitate that. But Nancy excelled in ways that people don't normally excel. So
built relationships with clients and a long time. I mean, 10 years is a long time. And you work with these people for a while until they became friends.
Yeah. Nancy, I'm talking on your behalf, but so Nancy managed millions of dollars in buy. So agencies would contact Nancy, and she would put together the buys and manage millions of dollars for large corporations and businesses on behalf of your company. And she got it really, 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 really good at that.
Yeah.
And so you would find all the small details. And even today, that's what makes our business so freaking good, is that you have you're so good at the little things. Find the little things and the financial things, and that way every client dollar that comes in is allocated properly and went to the right thing. It's all being efficiently spent. And that's where you excelled. Like, so you did that for how many years?
10 years.
10 years selling television advertising.
10 years, yeah.
So the cool growth process between this is Nancy and I were operating in two different worlds.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a weird...
You started doing video.
Yeah.
And so I would tell my clients about you, but it was weird because I didn't want to feel like I was, like pushing you on them or anything like that. And we had our own production team at the station. So I never really introduced you to clients unless they said, hey, we don't want your station to do it, but we want something a little
different.
bit different. And so I would literally just give them your card and say, you call them and you guys set that up and figure out what you want to do.
That
just
way
to kind of stay
Nancy
out
had
of
a really good job. We didn't want to we didn't want to jeopardize that for just
no.
the Josh over there trying to do some video work.
But then the other salespeople got wind of it.
Yeah, but see, cameras there are different. So like when we were in that business, when we started that business, there was no such
HD.
thing as high definition TV. Can you fathom that? Like broadcast was not in high definition.
It was just coming out where it was first station to have HD. It was a big deal.
And so high definition commercials were a new thing.
Yeah.
And even the station's systems were not set up to do high definition recording for TV commercials.
Right.
And then lo and behold, the 7D came out and the 5D came out for Canon that had the neat little movie function on it that shot 1080p video. And so that opened a world in a big way. Nancy was on set with a guy that was shooting commercials.
That's what I was going to say. I was
like, Josh, you got to see this.
Yeah, I had a client and they needed a commercial done. So I had called somebody that I had met and said, hey, can you shoot a commercial for them? You know, they hated the project that we had put together for them. And they're like, yeah, sure. They come out there in this DSLR and it was just on a tripod and it just sat there. And they would hit record and we would do our thing. I'm like, I hope they know that this is a video, not photos. Photo. I thought they were just doing photos. And come to find out, obviously they produced a video with this camera. I'm like, Josh, this is literally the camera that you have at home.
Yep.
So what are they doing? And you're like, well, I want to figure it out.
Went down the world of the YouTube and everything else and like, okay, let's figure this stuff out. And just got obsessed with it. And so we offered a service at the time that no one was offering was high definition TV commercials. And TV commercials were still a really big thing. Social media was still very new and budding. Like Facebook barely existed.
No.
Instagram, I remember when Instagram got bought for $1 billion and everybody thought that was crazy.
Right.
So none of that stuff was really happening. There were no
MySpace.
advertisement there. Yeah,
MySpace.
Yeah, it was MySpace is where you would share the stuff. So I started just building clientele. Like building clientele, and we kind of did this a little bit together, but really it was separate, just because we didn't want to jeopardize your business. And one of the breakthrough commercials we did was for Bogue Watch down in Highway 24. Nancy always wanted to live in that neighborhood.
Obsessed with the neighborhood.
She got obsessed with the neighborhood, and just so happened, I'm a firm believer in life is like life offers you opportunities, and then how you deal with those opportunities really determine what happens to you in life. And some people want to take risk, other people don't want to take risk, or some people don't understand what the opportunity is in front of them.
Right, and I can't explain it because I had a gut feeling about the neighborhood, and I was like, we are moving there. And you kind of gave me a little pushback at first because it was kind of out of the way. And I was like, we can do this. We're going to put our money together. We're going to save as much as we can for this down payment. We're going to move here. Well, I was like, well, if I'm going to look at this neighborhood, I might as well sell something. So I walked in, talked to the lady in there, and she said, well, my marketing person's coming in the next couple of weeks. Do you want me to set up a meeting? Yep. Yes, absolutely.
And this is the marketing person for the whole developer.
Correct.
Like a big developer.
Yeah. So we set up a meeting and I met with her and I said, well, my husband does production if you're looking for a commercial for the property. And then, you can run ads on our station to sell the neighborhood. Because at the time, they didn't have any houses really sold. It was all pre-sales. And so sure enough, she said, yeah, how much does he charge? And I told her and she was like,
about laughed.
She laughed. And I literally said, is that good or bad? She goes, let him call us. We'll set it up. And you did the commercial and they fell in love with it.
Yeah. So when they fell in love with it, they loved it. And then this person still is a contact. So they fell in love with it. They said, we've got to get you in contact with the agency that we use and do stuff with. Yeah. And so she did. She gave us that contact information. For me, this is where things kind of started in a really cool way, where I got the opportunity.
Met some cool people.
Yeah, I got to pretend, not pretend, but I had a lot of catching up to do as far as learning on how to do things and stuff. And so that commercial did really, really well for them. And then it opened the door to this day, which is a good friend, Leighton. And so Leighton out of Nantucket, and I learned a lot from Leighton, and I'll always say that. So Leighton, called me up, and I remember the first time he's like, "Hey man, I'd like to try you out. I'm doing a shoot in Charlotte, and it's for this neighborhood and all this other stuff.
Me I should call you.
I should call you, and I don't know if I can afford you yet." And he started asking me questions I literally had no idea about. He's like, "Well, what type of lighting do you use?" And he was talking about Kino Flow lights and this. I had no idea what a Kino Flow light was. Like, yeah, sure, we use the best there is. And so I remember hanging up off the phone with him in that moment, and what are Kino Flow lights and where can I rent them? Because I know I can't afford them. I did like a simple Google search. I'm like, oh my God, these things are like $15,000. Yeah. And there was a company in Wilmington that rented them, and that's what I did. I had to drive. I didn't tell him this, but I had to drive to Wilmington and get the lights, and then go and shoot. And it was just crazy. Yeah. The first shoot I did with him, I made absolutely nothing.
Why is that, Josh?
Let me tell you why.
What happened?
But let me reverse that. Like before we get into not making nothing, but So I remember going up to do the creative meeting with them, which was a day before the actual shoot. The neat thing about doing stuff for him that really opened the door for all the other things we did was he actually hired extremely talented photographers to do the media. And so what we were tasked to do, we would go and he would create all these lifestyle scenes, and we would create scenes for neighborhoods that weren't yet built. And so like we would use a house, and we would different scenes, or we would be off site and creating very similar scenes that could then be used to do advertisement, Google ads, all the video ads, and also build out the media for a website.
Right.
So the first guy that I met, his name was Chip Simon. And so I remember sitting in the car as he showed up with Leighton, and I learned something then is like, if you're really good, it really doesn't matter how you look.
That's right.
So this guy shows up and he has a shirt on that says Pugs, Not Drugs.
You still remember
and
that?
He had chef pants on. And so the first meeting I had was with Leighton, Chip, who was wearing the outfit, and we're talking about just the creative ideas of what we're going to do the next day. And I remember Chip just like piping up. He's like, a lot of people, look at me and they don't take me seriously and this and that. And I remember I had a little smart remark. I was like, no, you can't be kidding right now. People don't take this seriously. But the thing that I learned about Chip was this guy knew his junk, right? So like the next day, I got to shoot with him and learn from him. He was a Nikon shooter, which is interesting, and he was sponsored majorly by Nikon. And the guy he is the guy behind the Nickelodeon look of like that big wide angle display stuff or photography. He started that whole thing.
That's cool.
And so yeah. I got to see how Chip would frame things up. He was a guy that's so technical about what he did based off the time of the day and where we were in the country. He could give you the exact Kelvin and temperature of what the camera should be in order to shoot white balance proper and stuff. And he was all about these weird Russian lenses and just the characteristics which the lenses and all the framing did for the type of feel that Leighton was looking for, because he knew Leighton liked this certain style. So I got to learn from him and then other photographers along the way through Leighton by doing these shoots that I would have never gotten the opportunity to learn or do in Eastern North Carolina. So I was able to take those things that I had learned and then offer them to like local clients here and stuff and just keep building that out.
Right.
So that was kind of cool. I mean, that was really kind of cool. So we just kept building clientele, and then it really got to a point in life for us, not to speed things up, but the thing, this can get really long. Before you go there,
but you do have to talk about the job that you did.
Oh,
your
yeah.
job, you didn't make any money. So and I wasn't mad because obviously you had no control over it. I was like, but dang it.
Yeah,
that would have been so nice.
That job in Charlotte, which I had budgeted out or whatever, one of the things he wanted a drone shot. So at the time, drones were not easy. Oh my gosh.
You had custom drones built from like eBay or something.
I did one, which I got hosed on. It never got the money, never got the copter work. But anyways, I had the DJI 1, the Phantom 1.
Yeah.
And in order to get a camera on that, you had to buy a Chinese gimbal, and then you had to buy a GoPro, and you had to put the two together. Then you had to wire the freaking gimbal to the soldered board of the Phantom, and then the controller you had to take apart and put a lever in it that would allow it to operate one of the channels so the camera could tilt. And you would get, both of them had batteries, and so when you launched it, you might get 3 minutes of flight.
And the batteries were expensive too.
They were. So the first time I used it was on Lake Norman in Charlotte. Not the first time, but the first time professionally. And there were no FAA. There was no laws at the time. And I sent it, and we're shooting this awesome wood boat, like beautiful wood boat. And the next thing I know, it's gone.
Oh no,
gone. I'm like,
you call me
gone.
Like,
drone was in the pond, in the lake, gone forever.
Yeah.
And I remember Leighton was like, "Hey, you got that footage though, right?" I'm like, no. That footage is on that GoPro somewhere in the ocean down there. So maybe one day, if anybody out there ever finds it, that'd be incredible to get the footage off of it. But it's still in the bottom of Lake Norman. And so I broke even. I didn't even break even. I lost money on that shoot. But the amount that I learned off this shoot is what we're calling valuable.
That's right.
So, yeah, it wasn't always easy. It wasn't all about the dollar ever.
No, it wasn't. It was really more about for you for learning. And it was really nice that people put trust in you. There are some that didn't, some that did. And the ones that did, you really overachieved and over-delivered. And so that gave you a really good reputation. I know some of the girls at the station would use you. They were like, give me your husband's number. I need help with a commercial. And it just kind of stemmed from there and grew from there. And then you started doing more and more jobs.
Yeah, and then there just really became a breaking point in life, right? Yeah. It was never, we've never liked the term agency. even though that's kind of what the industry coins us because of how we operate with people's
money.
Yeah,
that's what they understand it
But
as,
I kept growing, right? We kept growing, and then Nancy was kind of growing, but her company got bought out, and things changed.
Different. Everything changed, and I was working more, making less. I didn't see my kids. I was working till 3 a.m. I never saw him. He was busy.
Now it's the same thing, but for yourself.
Yeah, for ourselves, but we work together, so I get to see you. Our kids can come to the office, so it's just a little bit more freedom there.
And ultimately, what happened was clients were asking us for more than what we offered.
And we couldn't offer it.
Because there's a massive conflict of interest. So I'm always about my word and what I say, and we both are. So we didn't want to do anything that would jeopardize what we said we were doing. And that was for your company and also for myself, because I was working and doing some stuff for other people as well that was kind of in the same business. So it would have been a conflict of interest to do that stuff.
Right.
But there comes a point in life where you have to decide. And so we took that massive risk.
In January of 2020. And then 2 months later, COVID.
Yeah, COVID hit.
COVID hit.
But we had luckily by that point, we had really amassed a large list of clientele for people we had done work for and everything else. And it became a very natural transition from, hey, just video to this. And then some of our trials, though, as a company was like, I had always been the one that had filmed and produced things, right? And we were kind of dominantly known as just someone that made videos.
Right.
But now we do so much more. So we had to have a general idea of strategy of how do we brand ourselves beyond just videos. And we still are very much forefront on the video production stuff. But you come into this world with a whole nother level of
ad placement and advertising and digital and TV. And the cool thing was, we never really went and solicited business. When I had announced that I was leaving, remember, I have worked with these clients since even from the newspaper or from NC Coast, then into television, and then now we have this agency. So this is 10, 12 years of business with me. And so they were like, well, how do we continue the relationship? And so we're like, well, if you want, we can just be your agency and then we can handle everything. I wasn't just specifically for a TV station. We can do the radio and the magazines and billboards and digital and everything. So
and then there comes in our insatiable appetite to learn the best there is in all those avenues. So now today we make the videos, we place the videos, we do all the digital placement in-house, we build the websites, we do the storyboarding, we do all strategies, consulting and traditional placement. And it's insane.
Yeah, and it's really, we really do what the client needs. If there's a service that we don't technically offer, but we understand it and we do it, we just will help. Really is what we've turned into. We've kind of like, hey, my computer won't turn on. Can you help me out? Sure, bring it by and we'll figure it out for you.
Yeah.
So like little things like that.
When you do the right thing by people, like the jobs and the work will always come. Stand by your word, what you're going to do. Always under promise and over deliver.
Right.
And I think that's become what we do. And we're grateful to be able to do it day in and day out and continually get better. Now we have a small team here that helps us do everything. We're looking to expand, looking to grow. And those team members have allowed us to do things and grow in ways that, I think we both
couldn't have done it
couldn't have ever done. I think we always underestimate the power of a team. And the power of a team and the right team can allow you to grow and do things that are just incredible. And then each team member grows exponentially because we're all challenged by each other. Sure. And you're like, holy crap, that's some good product.
It's been fun to see the growth. And it's crazy growth, actually. I mean, if you really think about it, you start in a January of 2020, then COVID happens. And we actually grew a lot in 2020. And that really came from businesses actually having the time to come in and think about their business because they're always in their business and they couldn't ever leave. And especially anybody in the medical field, it was hard because they're always in surgeries or appointments. And then our team has been so amazing and it's just a big family here and we love it. And I know the dynamic, obviously this show is about like working with your significant other, and the dynamic, it's not everybody can do that. And I think people are always curious. That's always a question. How does it feel to work with your husband all day and see him every day and go
our growth would never happen if it wasn't for the couple dynamic.
Yeah.
Like, so you're so good at things that I'm not. And I think I'm really good at things that you're not. And that we support each other in ways that is just unheard of. And like, good luck competing with that. Like, and the couple can make each other. We always say this, and we say this to both Parker and Sammy here. It's like a couple, the person you choose in life will make or break you.
Right. Whether you go in business together or you don't. Not. But
the common goals in life of being successful and being a good person and whatever it is always important. Find the right person. So
because they can support you and cheer you on, or they can make your life.
So the long
difficult.
Story short is when you had the opportunity to see me at the phone booth Like your life was changed forever in that, moment. Isn't that insane?
It was a 4-hour conversation we had on the phone. I'm so lucky.
You're so lucky. And as you continue to realize how lucky you are, we'll continue to realize how we'll continue to be very, very successful.
You're right, Josh.
So the more luckier that you are, the more successful we'll be. Not a chance.
You're a mess.
Anyways.
No, it's been fun. It really has been fun. And I do actually enjoy working with you, believe it or not. And I just love that you can have someone's back, like no matter what.
Trust.
This can all go away tomorrow, but you always have each other's back and you're always going to do the right thing for each other. And that stems back to even my music stuff. You blindly followed me. You got screwed too. There was other situations where you were like,
we had to call the police.
Yeah, we did.
In college.
We did.
That's a whole nother story.
You gave some of your money to help me out, and he just kept taking
that guy's name is Ray Dell, if anybody wants to know.
I still remember. I forgot his name.
Called the cops on him.
You did, and I think they arrested him, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah, for
he had
fraud.
A warrant.
Yeah, and he was
went to Raleigh.
He was asking us
Mom
to wire
and Dad
him money.
Don't know about that.
Yeah, it was crazy. We had to wire him money a couple times, and he was supposed to give me this whole album thing. Stuff. It was just stupid. Anyways. Now it's different. I think I've matured a lot and grown a lot, and I can tell people no. And now the business has changed a lot too.
So together we've done it. It takes two. Together we've made this awesome thing. We continue going to make it awesome, and we're just so grateful to be able to do it together. So that's in a very short synopsis, although it felt long, how we came and who we are and what we are.
What TRIWORKS is and
who owns this beast.
Family-run business, and I love seeing our kids here in the afternoon, and the next generation will be Lincoln and Holland because they both love cameras.
That's it. So stay tuned to more of these other couples. We started off with ours. We're going to plan on doing the similar format with other companies in the area or other couples in the area that we've gotten the pleasure of knowing.
Yeah,
they're kind of in the same situation where the two of them together are just awesome. Mm-hmm. And you break one apart, I don't think it'd be as good. Mm-mm. So stay tuned for more of those.